Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Marcella Elliott Ferguson, and I'm from the University of the Bahamas. I am pleased this morning to be the moderator for this plenary session. Our topic this morning is walking the tightrope of mental health. Mental health impacts all of us, all at our institutions, our students, our faculty, our staff, and definitely it impacts our personal lives as well. Our speaker for this session is Professor Wendell Abel. Let me tell you a little bit about Professor Abel. Professor Abel completed his medical training at the University of the West Indies, and he has a bachelor's in medicine and bachelor's in surgery degree and a doctorate in psychiatry. He also has a master's in public health from the Johns Hopkins University. He is professor in mental health policy at the University of the West Indies and the head of the Department of Community Health and Psychiatry, UWI-MONA. He is also the senior consultant psychiatrist at the University Hospital of the West Indies. To his credit, he has over 83 journal articles, technical reports, and several book chapters focusing on a range of mental health issues. Professor Abel has been a policy advisor and advocate for mental health in Jamaica and the Caribbean for many years. He has played a critical role in shaping the public policy for persons living with disability, including mental disability. He has worked with agencies such as the OAS, PAHO, the EU, and of course, CARICOM. And this has facilitated several policy and program initiatives such as integration of mental health into primary health care, the reintegration of deportees, drug and violence prevention and treatment, and marijuana reform policy. In recognition of this work in drug policy reform, Professor Abel was made co-chair of the CARICOM Commission for the Decriminalization of Marijuana in 2017. Professor Abel has also received numerous honors and awards for his outstanding work. These include the Order of Distinction from the Government of Jamaica, 2007, special awards from the Medical Foundation of Jamaica and the Jamaica Psychiatric Association, respectively, as well as awards from the Pan American Health Organization. Special Vice Chancellor Award from UWI for Public Service in 2018, Gleaner Award for Health and Wellness in 2019. He has done a number of regional and international presentations and special lectures. He is also a well-sought-after motivational speaker. What a resume. I am confident that this will be informative, enlightening, and definitely motivational. Please help me welcome, as our plenary speaker this morning, Professor Wendell Abel.
I'm a big deal. You're my friend, I'm a big deal. Yeah, we're kinda important for real.
Morning, everybody. Let's come on. Let's all stand.
My friends are some big deals.
I want everybody to say, I'm a big deal. And you turn to the person next to you and say, I'm a big deal.
Money or fame or vanity. This one is all about self-worth. So big up your chest.
All right. All right. All right. You know what I want us to do now? I want you to walk around the room I know you've been meeting and greeting and talking, but we're energizing the room this morning. Walk around the room, and I want you to do the airport greeting. Greet somebody in the room. Pretend, imagine you've not seen this person in 20 years. We've started already.
And then you have way. That are the order in a free country. Yes, that are the status of the hierarchy. Ask anybody about it. 1.0 at the great point of rich. And we never cheat or copy, we get it. You know you have your dreams and nobody can stop it. Just walk out, bust a blank and say I'm a big deal. Very big deal, I'm a big deal.
We have greeted each other.
My friends have some big deals. Very big deal. Very, very, very important. For real. This has nothing to do with money or fame or
Okay,
fame.
okay, all right, okay.
So big up your chest.
Okay. Okay, all right. Back to our seats. Thank you. How was that? Great, eh? We're going to keep the energy going this morning. Now, I'm asked to speak to the topic, walking the tightrope of mental health. And let me say, it's a great honor to be here sharing with you this morning at your conference 2019. And I am glad and I congratulate the organizers for focusing on mental health. Now, I struggled with the discussion. And as I spoke to different persons, I realized there are different angles and sides to the discussion. And so it's ever changing in my mind, and I think this morning it may very well change. I may have to abandon plan A, right? And so, you know, in order to make the discussion more appropriate to us, I'd want to find out from you, what are some of the things you'd want us to address this morning? Let me hear. Do we have, yes, please go ahead. You want us to deal with caregivers, yes? Yes?
I would like us to address as human resource professionals, when we identify among our students and staff issues that might be mental health, we are not professionals who are trying to say that we are.
Yes.
We recognize that changes in behavior, changes in performance, and that sort of thing. How do we, in an appropriate manner, get them seeking help?
So you want it to be, you want some focus from the HR practitioner perspective, yes. How you deal with somebody with personalities. I hope it's not me you're talking about, you know. Yes.
Just recognizing mental health either in yourself
Yes.
or someone else.
Recognizing mental health issues, yes. How to deal with students, yes? The thin line between sanity and insanity, right? That's why the tightrope, yes? If it's a disability. All right, so, and I recognize I have colleagues in the room, you know. Professor Glips and Ms. Brown, yeah? Who work in mental health. So you may have to come to my rescue because we're going to shift and change the discussion as we go along. But when we talk about mental health, we're talking about a state of well-being. And it's a state in which every individual should be able to realize his or her full potential, to be able to cope with the normal stresses of life, to work productively, and to make a meaningful contribution to society. And I've been practicing for about 30 years. And increasingly, in fact, I commented to a colleague recently that when people walk into my office these days, a lot of them, the core of what they're sharing with me is, Doc, I want to be happy. How can I be happy? It's not about the hardcore mental health issues. And the point I'm making is that when we talk about mental health, we're not just talking about merely the absence of a disorder, right? But it's a state in which we achieve our full potential, we can cope, work productively, make a contribution to society, and to find our own inner happiness and peace. But I realize you also want us to look at some of the hardcore issues, and we'll touch on them. And so this morning, when we ask you to reinforce, you're a big deal, I'm a big deal, it's a tip number one. It's important for us on a daily basis to give positive affirmation to ourselves, yes? And to others. Because, in our home environment, in the workplace environment, a lot of issues arise because we do not create an environment in which we respond positively to each other. Throughout the day, it's calling somebody to say, why did you not meet the deadline? Why was the file not sent over? Why is the report late, right? And sometimes, in the fast-paced society in which we operate, we don't have time to remember to thank the person for doing what they did the day before. And so, positive affirmation, we have to create an environment in which we generate more positive affirmation. And I was using a lot of why questions, which I use deliberately. In our daily life, we should avoid why questions. They're useful probably in the classroom, but increasingly we realize they're bad questions because they're judgmental. Yes? If somebody comes to work late, why did you come to work late this morning? Yes? Why did you not call before? When you begin to use the why questions, you are humiliating people. It comes across as if you're putting them down. Yes? And the better question would be the what or how. I realize that you're late this morning. What are the reasons for your being late this morning, or for the fourth or fifth time late this week? Doesn't that come across better? And so we have to avoid the why questions. And we do it in our personal lives, we do it in the workplace, we do it to students. And a lot of times, the interpersonal relationship goes sour because of our communication style. Too many why questions. And I'll come back to that later. Now, the university, we know, is a complex, ever-changing environment. And I know that. I work there. It's highly competitive. It's a high information environment. So even for those of us who work in the university health services, when people come to us and we make a diagnosis or we tell them something, we know that we have to be armed with facts because they would have come before. Before they step in the office, they have all the information to challenge and counter. And it makes the environment a very challenging one. There are high levels of expectations. And we have multiple stakeholders which also carry their expectations. The students, staff, faculty, retirees, the public, the politicians. And pause on the matter of retirees. I don't think we handle retirement well in the university. And I hear people saying true. A lot of us walk into the workplace not remembering there's a cutoff point, right? Yeah, but you realize the tension, isn't it true? When it comes to retirement, and people get vexed with us, and they're angry, and it's that people are pushing us out of our job, and they're treating us in an unkind manner, right? And so, individually, all of us, we must all prepare ourselves for that end point, right? For University of West Indies, I know my point is 65, and I'm preparing for it. I hope we're all preparing for that, right? Because retirement brings with it a lot of mental health issues. Because what it represents, what do you think it represents for most persons? It's death, it's what? It's what? Uselessness, it's loss of the job, it's loss of the structure. And a lot of people immediately go through what? Grieving. Right? Because anytime we experience any loss, the normal natural response to a loss is what? Grieving. Yes? And sometimes it's the persons who have retired from the campus. My campus, you said them years after walking around the campus. Lost. Right? And so we have to ensure that we I think this is an area that we need to strengthen. It's not about just calling people to a meeting and talking to them about retirement. And a lot of people don't come to the meeting because they don't want people to know that they're retiring as they go through their own struggle. We have to come up with a better way of preparing persons for retirement, one-to-one. We have to do a lot of work, right? I'm not happy with how we handle retirement in the system, yes? And I have to deal with it on a daily basis. And, you know, we have a lot of powerful persons in the university system. Powerful public image. And they also have issues because a lot of times in their mind they think they're here to stay and they do not make retirement plans. And you cannot do that 6 months before retirement. You have to begin to do that 2, 3, many years before, right? Especially on the financial side. That's another major problem. People walk into the office to find out what their pension is going to be 6 months before retirement, and then they're shocked because they realize there's not much funds there. We have to better prepare our stakeholders, our staff, our faculty for retirement. It's a major issue. Now, within the context of the workplace, I pose a question to you. What percentage of persons do you think have mental disorders in the workplace? What's that? 90%? You're working in a mad environment. Dr. Lips, Professor Lips, have your work cut out for you? Yes? 1 in 3, yes. Let's, Prof. Lips is 1 in 3. Yes, it's about that. 1 in 3, 1 in 5 in the workplace experience a mental health condition. And let me just look at the statistics at the bottom there. And that 40% of employees with a mental illness take time off because of it, up to 10 days a year. So there's loss of productivity. More than 35% of managers feel they receive no formal support or resources to help employees. Let me see those who share this opinion. Do you think your university supports you adequately in terms of how to deal with mental health issues in the workplace? You don't. And I think I'm hearing from who? The HR, the people who work in human resource. What are some of the problems you're having? Yes. And you work at which university? You're at Micah. You don't have adequate systems. Anybody else share the same sentiments? It's misunderstood. So what are the real so your issue is a system issue. You don't have, I'm hearing that to mean that, do you have a mental health services at the university? So you don't have services. So that's a challenge. Yes, sir. It's difficult and uncomfortable to talk about. Anything else? Yes.
Of how a person would feel if they want to report this to someone. You don't have the avenue, the provision to say, I want to speak to someone, and I'm going to feel confident that if I do so, it's okay. So people feel
so
that
confidentiality
right.
is an issue. And I'll come back to that. Yes.
In some cases, there's a view that if somebody exhibits mental health challenges, they should be fired.
They should be fired.
They don't have a place in the workplace.
And these are real issues. So we're talking about persons in the environment, you know? And what it goes back to is, from a human resource point of view, is the need to have a clear mental health policy. Yeah? And in developing your policy, I'm going to, there's a lot of work that has been done. ILO has done a lot of work in terms of mental health policy. There's also the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, right? That convention was signed, came about in 2006. What is interesting, many Caribbean countries, including Jamaica, were among the first countries to sign on to these conventions, right? And you should be familiar with these conventions, these human rights conventions, because they give us the framework in terms of how we develop our mental health policies within our systems. But clearly, we really need to, increasingly universities are recognizing that they need to have clear mental health policy for staff, students, for everybody, and also to ensure that we have adequate mental health services to meet the needs of the population. And even universities that have these services, recognize that there's such a high rate of utilization that you cannot meet the multiple needs. Yes, any other issue you want to raise, any question?
Just the fact that even if you have systems in place, sometimes the persons are reluctant to make use of those systems because they see it as being stigmatized.
Stigma and confidentiality. And I know that about my university, that I don't work with the university health services. I lecture in the university, and every now and then, probably more often than not, students come to me and say, especially after you teach a class, they make the diagnosis, I'm depressed or whatever, and they come to you. And as teachers, we're not supposed to be treaters, yes? Because it's really what you refer to as a boundary violation. But sometimes you have a student who is suicidal. You can't get them into care and you have to deal with it, yes? And in a small society, it can become problematic. And they'll tell you the reason they don't want to go to the services is because of confidentiality. But we know the services are highly confidential. I've never had colleagues there discussing patients with me. But because we're a small community, we don't feel it's a confidential environment. You spend 6-7 years in a close community as a university community. And for workers, it would be for longer than that. You get a sense that things can't be confidential when in truth and in fact. And so the point is, it's important that the services spend more time emphasizing and communicating to persons that our services are confidential. Yes? Because we have to address those concerns. It's how people feel and operate in a closed environment. Another issue, though, is that we don't have clear HR guidelines to deal with persons when they're showing signs of mental illness on the job, right? And I think one of the things that is often needed when things go extreme is that you should request an evaluation for fitness for duty. Yes? But you have to have your reports well put together. But in organizations here in Jamaica that I see do a good job at this, what they will do is ask us to do as mental health professionals is that we have concerns about this person on the job, and what we're requesting is a psychiatric evaluation to determine fitness for duty, because that's what we need sometimes, an evaluation to determine fitness for duty. And we hope that the university has clear policies that will guide that sort of thing, yes? But clearly, most institutions that's something we need to address. Now, would you say your university environment is a stressful place to work? Let me see show of hands who think their university is stressful. Wow. And some people saying, you have 2 hands? I'm going to tell you, boss. Anyway, well, stress in the workplace, there are many causes. The high or low demand jobs, poor support and workplace relationship, poor role clarity, poor change management. Yes, and we know that lots of tertiary institutions in the Caribbean are going through rapid changes, right? And when we do not manage change properly, it becomes very stressful. And when we're going through changes, we really should reach out to employ change consultants. Right? We have a concept that we must do everything, right? And you call on the human resource department to do everything, right? But there are many things that when we are implementing, we have to get external consultants to help us. The people who are in the change themselves cannot be the change facilitators and the change consultants. You have to invest in that. And I notice that's a major problem we have so that we can better manage change. Poor organizational justice adds to stress, poor environmental conditions, remote or isolated work, violent or traumatic events. And the most common among staff would be the work-related stress. I mean, in terms of mental health issues, work-related stress, relationship issues, and common disorders such as anxiety and depression. These are very common disorders, right? Other common disorders we see playing out among our students in the workplace. Mention depression, drugs and alcohol, anxiety. Lots of people run into your health centers on a daily basis, right, with panic attacks, yes? And they say their heart is pounding and they're breathing heavily and I'm going to die and I need an ECG. Common one, right? Lots of it is related to stress. You've seen it, right? And the panic disorders, they say a lot of that. And of course, the psychotic disorders like schizophrenia, trauma-related disorder, bipolar disorder. See a lot of bipolar disorder in university, they don't. And the reason is, the people who get bipolar disorders are the movers and shakers of the world. Bright people. In a bipolar disorder, what happens is that the brain goes at a fast rate. Some days I wonder if I have it, yes? But, and so you find high achievers. I'm not saying that everybody who is a high achiever, right? But you find that a lot of persons in the university environment, it is what has gotten them to that point, yes? Because they have a brain that really operates at a fast rate and allow them to work 20 hours a day, right? And survive on 4 hours of sleep. And they're able to do 10, 20, 30 things at one time, yes? It only becomes problematic when it begins to what? Affect their functioning, right? And I'm sure you've interfaced with persons with bipolar disorder. Grieving is another common issue. Loss, illness, change, retirement. We mentioned retirement this morning. And the personality disorders, big one. Don't talk about them, but very often in the workplace, you know, if you find, an old psychiatrist told me this, if you come to work every day and you find you're talking about the same person every day, over and over, maybe that person has a personality disorder, right? You begin to move your head and say yes, you begin to picture, right? And people with personality disorder usually have poor insight, very difficult to treat, and they can be highly problematic in the work environment, yes? A very common one is a paranoid personality disordered person, the person who is always suspicious, think people are talking about them, right? They're cautious about making telephone calls in the office because persons may be listening to the call, and their computer, they shut it down because people may hack into their computer. You know some of those type, right? And there's a disorder, and they don't eat from people in the office, and they don't put anything in the refrigerator at work. And these people are usually meticulous, well-organized persons, yes? Very efficient at what they do. But in many instances, you know, we can live with them and we can exist with them because they tend to focus a lot on what they're doing and so on, yeah? But I think paranoid personality is one such personality disorder which is common. This morning, it's not my intention to go through the full range of disorders, just to touch on different things, yeah? And of course, stress is a big one. So there are a wide range of disorders. Anything you'd want to ask about disorders? Because whenever you suspect something, the important point that we want to make here is that if you suspect somebody may be having issues, refer them. Refer them either to the university medical team if you don't have mental health services, or refer them to the mental health. What's that? Well, I suppose it's something you'd have to discuss with human resources, and if you're the person supervisor, you may say, well, recognize things may not be going very well. I'm wondering if all is well with you, and would probably refer you to the health services. And you remind them that the people in the health services really treat normal people with normal problems. But maybe my colleagues might be able to give me a better advice in terms of how to refer. Anything else you want? What's the trick? What's the best way to refer people? Because I think we're really having problems with that, you know.
I think one of the things, Wendell, for us,
yes.
Sorry, I just put a sweet in my mouth. One of the things for us
I surprised you by pouncing on you, right?
You know?
Yeah, anyway.
No, the fact that you have to be prepared to repeat that referral.
Yes.
People often think I say it once and that's it. we have people who come to us after the 4th or 5th referral because they're not wrapping their minds around the fact that they really do need this. But when they look at their own situations over time, they might get to that. So don't be put off by having to do that several times.
Yes.
Certainly at UE, we can consult with staff members about how to try to make a referral that works.
Thank you very much. That was very insightful. Let's move on. I have 15 minutes. So tip number 2 is that we have to manage workplace stress, right? And you realize as I go through, I'm involved in different persons. We will have a QA. And we need to institute mental health first aid in the workplace. Somebody mentioned the concerns about stress. And these first aid, they can be seminars, they can be programs, should be intended to reduce stigma, to help us understand and recognize signs of mental illness, certainly to reduce workplace stress, to ensure that we have proper referral systems and people understand the referral systems in place, and most importantly, for us to put support systems in place. Yes, I was going to say to have support groups, but support groups don't work in the Caribbean. Yes? If you go to Florida, you can find a support group for everything. Like, if your dog has died and you're grieving, you can go to a support group for grievers of the death of a pet, right? Everything, yes? And we're not laughing at, it's the point is that in larger population centers, people are more aware of the need, but also feel more comfortable because they're able to conceal their identity, yes? But in small societies, it's very difficult because you're worried that if you go to the support group, then your neighbor might be there, your pastor's wife might be there, or a cousin down the road. And that's one of the reasons, we're small and we're not comfortable, but we're getting there. But we struggle with support groups. But there are some support groups that could work in a university environment, like probably a grief group, a group for grieving or whatever. But support systems work and they help to enhance the mental health services. So think about that. We should all have at least a wellness program, right? There is a need for us to have more training in human resources, manager training, and employee training on mental health issues. Now, I come back to your theme, which is new times, new approaches in higher education. And what it says to me, that these are new times. There's a call for new approaches. And it means that it's change. Change is a buzzword. And that we all have to be what? Responding to the what? Changes. So while I dealt with the wider mental health issues, what I'm going to do now is to focus on us in this room. Because who takes care of the caregiver? Right? You've come to Royalton for the weekend, right? Imagine. And all your burden is about what am I going to do to change the system at work and deal with people and their mental health issues. And day in, day out, you have to deal with it. But who takes care of you? Right? And that's a big surprise this morning. I decided that I'm going to set aside some time to just take care of us in this room. Who takes care of the caregiver? And the first thing I want you to do is do the butterfly hug. Even the men can do that. Put your hands like this and just hug yourself. Just keep doing it. And just remind yourself that you're doing a great job. Right? At the workplace, at home, at church, in your community, right? And you have to pause and do this to yourself on a daily basis. I notice some of you are still doing the butterfly hug. That's very good. But in times of change, we have to embrace change, right? We all have to what? Embrace change. And I tell you this, those who do not plan to change will be exchanged in the plan. And that's mine. You can use it. Sound like the supervisors clapping, Yeah? Those who do not plan to change will be exchanged in the plan. And we have to change because the only thing that is certain in this world and in a university environment is what? Change, right? And we know insanity is doing the same thing what? over and over and expecting to get the what? Same results. To get different results. Thanks for that. That means you're awake. And I tell you this, if you keep on doing what you always done, you're going to get what you always got. If you keep on doing what you always done, you're going to get F. F is failure now. Don't go there. Failure. I'm a decent psychiatrist. I would never go any path. Don't allow your minds to go anywhere. Do things, we have to do different things, and we have to do what? Things differently. And I remind us, we have to respond to change. That's why change management is important. Tip 4, I see 2 psychologists in the room. And an important part of mental health, because there's a whole body of psychology which is referred to as cognitive psychology, which places a lot of importance on the mind. You'd be surprised how much illness and sickness and mental health issues is due to our thinking. Yes? Yes, the root of it, thinking. And we have to change our thinking. Because our thinking affects our feeling, and it affects how we what? Act. In fact, while I say that, I just want to say to you that there's a gift I have that I would give to somebody if you would run up to the platform. There's a gift, yes. But when you come, you have to do some things, you know. All right, you've run. Let's give her a hand. But, oh, thanks very much. What's her name? Arlene, yes, thanks for coming. Let's give her another hand. But some of us sat in our chairs, right? And we didn't want to come, right? All you have to do is run. The mic has stopped again. Yes, too much, you know. You're making my diagnosis, eh? Hyperactive. Yes. Yeah, what I'm saying is that some of us sat in our chairs. Although I said there's a gift. And you didn't come. You didn't move. Why did you not move? Yes. Your knees. Is it that you fear that you'd probably fall down and embarrass yourself? Yes? Yes? Or that, what's that? Or that, and I said run. And what was your concern? You can't run. It's your mind again, right? The motivation, or you probably were of the opinion if you come, I'm going to ask you a question, and you probably embarrass yourself in the group. And you see what was happening is that your thinking, right, was beginning to affect how you feel, anxious and fearful, and it resulted in what? Inactivity. Yes? But she was able to overcome that, and she ran, right? And she felt positive, and she is going to get her book. Let's give her a hand, right? It's how our thinking affects our feeling and action. And remember, this is for us, you know. And so the take-home message is that we have to say no to what? Stinking what? Thinking. Because negative thoughts affect how we feel about ourselves. They affect how we feel about others and even about the future. I'm not going to run because I may fall and embarrass myself. So I'm not going to get that book. And sometimes that's what stands between us and our personal success and our personal happiness and our personal achievement. This message is for us this morning. Yes? And let me tell you, negative thoughts affect your performance, even in bed. Because if you go to bed with negative thoughts, you cannot sleep. Don't go down that road. No negative thoughts. No negative thoughts. Madam Chair, we have to get that. No negative thoughts this morning. And I tell you some common negative thoughts, you know, magnification, where you magnify the negatives, right? Especially in this environment. You call a meeting, especially among Caribbean people, and you throw out a good idea, and people jump on that idea and they tell you why it can't work. Right? Isn't that so in meetings? It can't work because there's no money, we don't have enough staff, there's not enough parking, the air conditioning unit is not working, no policies in place, and we go on, yes? We have to change our negative thinking. It's what stands between us and success and moving forward and our general mental health, individually and collectively. And so when you get back to work next week, make sure you create an environment that is more positive. You have to highlight it and tell people, look here. When I go to a meeting and I tell people, look, and they start with the negative, I say, let's shift to the solutions, right? Nobody pays you to come to work to repeat problems, yes? They pay you to solve the problems, yes? And you have to create a culture in which we are more solution-focused, right? And it's also an individual culture within ourselves. And of course, a catastrophic thinking where we're always predicting the worst, the very worst, all the time. And so we all have to police our thoughts for good mental health and also success. And you have to catch these thoughts, the negative one. You have to check them and you have to correct them. Yes? What the mind conceives, it will achieve. You'll never go higher than you think. And I'm going to go quickly. This slide, what does it say? It's amazing. Opportunities like that, you know. Opportunities like that. But many of us saw what? Opportunities what? Nowhere. But when you look at it again, it's what? Opportunity is now here. And so an important thing we need to recognize is that we have to create an environment in which we are constantly seeking opportunity. Constantly seeking opportunity. Yes? Because that's how we find the solution to our problems. Because, the acronym POUR, passing over opportunity repeatedly. This conference, let it be an opportunity for change. Opportunity to shift your thinking. Opportunity to be a different person. Let this be an opportunity for you so that when you return to your institution, you can make an impact, right? And that institution next year will be different from what it is today. Use this conference to build your social capital and leverage that social capital. That's why you spend all of this money to come to this conference, and take off the few days from work. Yes? Apart from sitting on the beach and having a good meal, but it's an opportunity to bring people together, yes? So that they can create and generate other opportunities. And I'm going to go quickly as I realize time is going. The elephant. What you see in this picture? As again, our mental health. What do you see? There's an elephant, and how many legs does the elephant have? How many legs do you see? No, anything you see is right, How many you see? You see 3 legs, right? How many you see? You see 5 legs. Prof. Lips, how many you counting? Like you're counting 10. You're seeing what? 8. You're seeing what? 6? Madam Chair, we have a crisis in tertiary education. People can't count. What you see is what you see, right? But the message here, it's about perception. What we focus on becomes our reality. And when we focus on what is wrong or missing, we're going to see everything through that frame. And so when you walk out of this room today, and it's important to your mental health, that you begin to reframe. You begin to do what? Reframe, right? And reframe is about looking at things differently. And you can choose to look at it in a positive way, whether the glass is half full or half empty. In fact, and I'll go through this one quickly, they dispatched some university administrators to go to a remote village to see if they can recruit students for university, right? Well, this one is not about administrators, it's about selling shoes, right? And One group came back and they said, business bad. People have no shoes. No, sorry, I think I have this. Not a shoe will sell. People don't wear shoes. That's what they came back and said. People don't wear shoes. Not a shoes will sell. Not a shoe will sell. Right? Close down the factory. Forget about your marketing. But the other group, they reframe and they came back and say what? People have what? No shoes. Great market. Lots. Yes. He said, well, we have to begin to reframe. Because in reframing, we look at the what? Opportunities and the what? Possibilities. You have to reframe the impossible as possible. And so as I come to a close, another tip I'm going to share with you. Learning to pause and breathe. You know, a lot of people come to the office, especially with anxiety problems, and you'll see it at the workplace, right? When you're doing your staff meeting, pause, breathe. And I'm going to share with you a simple technique. What you do, breathe through your nostril, just relax yourself, no pickpockets in the room, put down your purse, right? We have to do it quickly because time is limited. And I want us to just relax ourselves and just breathe through your nostril as if you're smelling a rose. And you're going to breathe out through your mouth as if you're blowing a leaf. Let's do it gently, everybody. Breathe in through your nostrils, gently. Relax yourself. And you breathe out through your mouth as if you're blowing. Just breathe in and out, relax. Keep doing that. No, we're doing it quickly. All right, we can't stop. How do you feel as you do that? It relaxes, eh? And I tell you, it's a useful technique during the stressful day. At the end of the day, when you're stressed out, you go to bed sometimes and the thoughts keep coming and you can't fall asleep. Do your deep breathing and it sends you to sleep. Another tip, yes? And it will keep the psychologists out of business and the psychiatrists. This one I don't think I'm going to touch on it. We need to improve our communication in the workplace, in our home environment. And in Caribbean culture, one of the problems we have is that we communicate using a lot of you message. I alluded to it earlier. Somebody comes to work late and you say, the question is, you've come to work late. Why have you come to work late? Or why didn't you send the file? Why didn't you do that? And in our communication, we're continuously, you this, you that, you that. And you know what you messages do? They put people down. They humiliate them. They embarrass them. And what you have to do is change your communication. As administrators, you supervise people, you guide people, we have to change our communication to iMessage technique. So, person comes to work late, this is how you craft the iMessage technique. And this is just a quick tip. We'll have to build on it. I feel very concerned that you're at work late this week for the 5th time. Because, I'm concerned about you and your well-being. And what I would want or prefer is for you to tell me what may be happening. Doesn't that come across better? What's that? It's what? Yeah, but the iMessage technique. In your personal life, a lot of times relationships not going well, it's because the communication has broken down. Right? Partners, couples fighting each other and you message. You're worthless. You're no good. You didn't remember the wedding anniversary. You never remember my birthday. Yes? The you messages. And it would be, I feel a little disappointed because yesterday was my birthday and I was hoping for it that, you could have remembered. And what I would want or prefer is for you to make greater effort to recall or remember. That too easy. No, that's not going to work. No. After 2-3 years? But after 2-3 years, how do you feel? No, feeling. How would you feel? You feel frustrated. You feel angry. Because what? Yes. And what would you want? Would you prefer? Wow, that's harsh. Yeah, but try it. But let me tell you, try it. I know you're just. Yes, but the iMessage technique, let me tell you, it works if you work it, right? And we can have much more, more discussion on this iMessage. We could have taken half an hour to deal with it, right? And so, as I come to an end, what we need is radical transformation programs in our workplace to enhance affirmation, radical change our thinking, to do more reframing and create opportunity for opportunity seeking. I think you thought I was going to come here and talk about the hard mental health issues, but I'm speaking to your heart and souls this morning. And as I come to a close, I want to remind you to take care of our, and I say not yourself, ourselves. All of us need to be reminded. Look here. You're entitled to your leave. When it's time for you to go on leave, take your leave. And whenever people send their requests to my desk for leave, I always sign off on it. Find some way out to keep the organization going. Yes? Because university life is just continuous and continuously busy and demanding. And all of us are affected. And I'm reminding us, take care of yourself. Yes. Make sure you manage your life, work-life balance. Remember, there's a higher power. Take care of your health. When last have you gone for your own health checkup, right? It's important. And you manage your exercise, diet, and relax. That's why you're here, to take some time out to relax, yes? And so, as I come to an end, I want everybody, on your mark, stand for me. Everybody, we're at the end. And I want to tell us that every morning in Africa, as the sun rises, a gazelle wakes up knowing that it must outrun the fastest lion, or else it's going to be hunted to death. And every single morning, the lion wakes up knowing that it must outrun the slowest gazelle, or it's going to starve to death. And at sunrise tomorrow, whether you're a gazelle or a lion, you must be running at your best. And so, take care of yourselves.
I'm a big deal. You're my friend, I'm a big
Thank
deal.
you.
Yeah, you're kinda important.
Thank you, Professor Abel. What an engaging, provocative, and informative session. Please give him another round of applause. He has given us so many useful tips to recognize and address mental health issues, whether in the workplace or in our personal lives. We thank you. Remember, take care of self. At this point, I know, even though his presentation was very engaging, I'm going to open the floor for a few questions. We have mics set at 2 locations. If you have a quick question for Professor Abel, I'm sure he'll be willing to entertain them. Any questions?
Good morning. Just a comment more than a question. Karen, Ford Warner, UE Open Campus. Morning, Dr. Abel. Really an able presentation. Well, extremely engaging. I really am very interested about tips for people who are caregivers, and I do think that that is very important that we were able to touch on that. But I just wanted perhaps to share one thing that we do in the Open Campus, starting with our leadership team, and we're beginning to trickle down, is in terms of self-care and support, is that we've formed what we call trios, which is a support group of 3 people. You don't have to have an addiction or anything. You're just 3 individuals, and you set certain goals for yourself, and your trio supports you in these. If it's getting more sleep, if it's losing weight, if it's becoming less anxious, if it's achieving a goal, then the trio supports that. And there's somebody always checking on you, just checking in on you during the course of the week to see how you're getting on. So I recommend that to my colleagues here.
That's an excellent initiative. Let's give her a hand.
Great. Any other comments? Thank you.
Just a quick one. Are there any opportunities for persons to receive you don't want to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but within the place of work with staff and students, I think if we had a cadre of persons who had any kind of basic training and sensitization to help us, almost like, well, it's not really the trio, but it's similar, just so that we can provide some support, because HR is not able to do it by themselves. And in my organization, over time, I've seen where we've had staff who have come on and there are issues that they have, and HR would reach out to certain persons who they feel would have the kind of temperament to work with those persons. And if not, they're bounced around from department to department. But I'm one of those persons, but I don't have any training. So I'm wondering, is there an avenue, a medium, where we can come and maybe get, some kind of building up so that we can help to support the organization?
You've raised an important point, and what it's highlighting, I'm glad you've raised it, that we probably may need to offer short courses in mental health for human resource practitioners, because what I'm hearing that cry, because certainly as you appreciate, couldn't be done in a 1-hour session, and I know you're not requesting that, but what I hear you saying is that as a university, institutions, we probably should craft programs like these. So it's an excellent idea, and I see it as a great opportunity, and I'm going to run with it. What's that? Okay, sure.
Professor Abel, do you have any tips for dealing with bullying in the workplace?
And it's interesting that you brought it up, yes? Because it's only in recent times that we've been talking about bullying in our culture throughout the Caribbean, yes? For years, children would go to school and would just say, oh, they're being teased. And sometimes we say, oh, other children just making fun of them, yes? And we're now recognizing that there's a label, right, being attached to that sort of behavior, which is bullying, yes? And that may also occur within the context of the workplace. There's also a very common practice, which is body shaming, which we do a lot in Caribbean society, yes? Even without recognizing it, yes? So there are lots of issues. How to deal with it is that we have to build awareness. We have to begin to sensitize persons about these issues in the workplace, and also the impact that it can have on victims, yes? And how to put policies in place in terms of how to appropriately deal with these issues. Yes? But thanks for raising that.
Thank you very much. Hubert Fulford, Turks and Caicos Islands. We're talking about small spaces, Professor. How do we deal with kind of managing the intimacy of small spaces with mental health problems, when mental health problems are identified or seen?
In the small spaces. Mr. Fulford, you're the one who was at Wolmer's, eh? Would you believe that this man had a great impact on my life as a youngster? Thank you very much for being there for us in school. He's a great educator. But how we deal with mental health issues in small spaces, it's a challenge, because as I said earlier, when you live in small spaces, sometimes there's a perception that it's difficult to maintain confidentiality, and as a result, people hesitate to seek treatment support, and so on. And these are real concerns on the part of service users. I think the way we have to go about it is to educate and build awareness, and to give people reassurance that confidentiality will be maintained and so on. But even then, in small spaces, the challenges still remain the same. But I think it's about mental health, building mental health literacy, education, to reduce the stigma, and to help to lift that veil of secrecy and that veil of silence and that veil of shame that sometimes surround mental health issues, that we, as small society, small population centers, have to get the message out that mental health issues and mental disorders are no different from physical disorders, and that that also utilizing the mental health resources, and that if you were to, is really should be seen as going to your doctor, and to remind people that mental health practitioners deal with normal people with normal problems. I don't know if that sufficiently answers the question.
Great, thank you. Any other question? Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, Thomas Edward, Barbados. My question relates to the dichotomy male, female, and how they deal with mental issues. How do you approach this from the HR point of view?
Could you repeat the question, please?
The men versus the women. Men deal with problems very differently from women. How do you take this into consideration when you deal with mental health issues from the HR point of view?
Okay, you mean a male treating a female?
No, I'm saying men deal with the problems differently because I'm saying men as a whole handle the mental issues
okay,
differently
I get the question.
from women.
Yes, that men deal with problems differently. There are gender differences. Right. Yes, and there are then gender differences in terms of how persons actually perceive mental illness and disorders, but also how they express mental conditions. Especially, I give you an example: depression, which is it's very common mental health problem. 1 in 5 female may get depressed over a lifetime, about 1 in 10 male. But women are more comfortable in expressing their emotions, yes? And so a woman will walk into your office and say, "Doc, I'm not feeling happy, I'm depressed, I'm sad." Men are not as comfortable in our culture in expressing their feelings. And also, women show more health and help-seeking behavior as compared to men. So we have these gender differences that we have to deal with. But how you deal with it is, again, to just build the awareness. Build the awareness. 20 years ago in Jamaica, we didn't, for example, have as high an awareness in terms of depression. And 20 years later, I'll tell you, a lot of patients will walk into my office and say, "Doc, I am depressed." They'll actually make the diagnosis. And what is it that made the difference? Was that several years ago, about 20 years ago, we launched a massive mental health awareness program, right? And I think the theme was, there's no good health without good mental health, yes? And I think it has shifted how people see mental health in the society. So it's about the awareness program, building the awareness and reducing the stigma and normalizing the issues. But I thought you were going somewhere else, and I think I'll just touch on it and run. That clearly the whole matter of sexual harassment at the workplace is something that we have to address in our institutions. I realized, I think I saw something that University of the West Indies, for example, I think it may be this week or next week, they're planning a whole training, sensitization session on sexual harassment. And I think currently in the press, there's an institution in Jamaica that is grappling with that issue. That in the Caribbean, we sometimes run away from these issues. These issues are real in the workplace, and we have to develop clear guidelines and not guidelines to facilitate it, but certain policies in terms of sexual harassment issues within the workplace. And we must deal with it. We cannot run away from it because our societies are becoming more aware and sensitized on the issues, especially in the context of the Me Too movement that is going on in the USA. So we have to look at our sexual harassment policies in the workplace.
Okay, we have time. I think there are 2 persons waiting. We have time for 2 more questions. I'm sure Professor Abel will hang around for a little bit so that if you wish to engage with him on the break, please feel free to do so. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm Sharon Williams-Brown, counselor at UWI-Mona, and just wanted to comment on the question about training and just very briefly say something about a couple of models we've used at Mona. One is just a half day or a full day, training workshop, which we've done in conjunction with HR as counselors. And we have taught people about how to recognize and refer within that very brief space. So that sort of model is available. We also actually work with resident advisors for a 2 or 3 day program, filling it out that way. And that could actually also be done through HR. And the other thing that has happened is we actually have on the campus what we call peer support providers who we train and supervise. But I've had in some years staff ask if they can join that training group. And we have actually allowed a small number, because we can't swing it, so that, a lot of them are in that training. But each year, we can allow spaces for some staff to do a full week training. So just throwing those models out as well, too.
Thanks, Sharon, for sharing with that. Is there a possibility that this sort of training could be extended through video conferencing and so on? Because, I know we're scattered across islands and countries and so on within this space called the Caribbean, but we have to recognize that we have to maximize the limited resources. That's why having conferences like this are good, because we now are becoming aware that we can use the internet to communicate and to facilitate training and that sort of thing. And so it's good for us as we interact and network, we share with each other, come up with ideas and solve the many problems that we face. But it's not beyond us to solve them.
Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Georgiana Richardson, and I'm from the St. Augustine campus in Trinidad. Just one comment about something that the professor said about people getting in depression when they're retired or close to retirement. I am at a transient state of my life. Next week, Tuesday, I'll be officially retired from the university. Right, I'll be 60 next week, Tuesday. Now, when I went to my HR department and they read out the letter about my retirement and so on, the first question I asked them is there a retirees association? And they said no, and it really sunk my heart, because I know there is an alumni, UWI alumni, with students and so on. So I said, why don't you form a retirees association? I didn't get any answer. But it's not that I'm depressed or anything, because now I'm busier than when I ever was before. I've had my plans in my life long years ago, and I'm actually living out all my dreams and all my aspirations and all my research. And I have books to write, I'm doing social work, and I'm actually going to start another degree, and I'm MPhil PhD, okay? So I just want to pick you up on that, and you as a whole. It's not you work for some an organization like myself. I'm 38 years, right? And when you're done, it's like you're done, but you still want to feel some sort of connection somewhere. So we could think about a retirees association. There are people with a lot of skills, and they would be interested in even doing volunteer work. That's all.
Thank you.
But let's give her another. One of the things I'm happy about is that we're stimulating a lot of thinking. And I really thank you for sharing with that. When you said that, it's sunk my heart. I was worried and said, wow, is she getting depressed? But I'm glad you've reminded us that you're not doing it. And she shared with us some of the positive things that she's actually doing. Question for you. Did you start preparing for retirement years before?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
But I think of those who haven't and who get into a state of depression when they have to retire. They feel a disconnect. I'm really talking on their behalf.
And when people get that letter, how did you feel when you got that letter? Did it communicate a sense of finality? Was it a shock? How did you feel?
Well, to some extent, because they had invited me to retirement seminars before,
yes,
and I would not go. So what you said was true. But when I went to get the letter, I actually wanted
was a little anxious because I wanted to see what my gratuity was looking like.
I'm sure it was up to your expectations.
To some extent.
But thanks again for sharing. But she's also shared with us some of the things that we can be doing, ought to be doing in the university space, that we can form groups, support groups. In fact, just yesterday, a colleague was saying that they just overheard a group of colleagues saying that they were all interested in gardening, and they said, we're going to start a garden club and that sort of thing. When you walk across the campuses, I realize it's all academic, book and work. We're not doing some of the more softer and, what's that? Yes, things that can enhance our function and role within the environment. And I'm going to encourage us, to begin to think about these issues and see how we can create a greater space and opportunity, especially for those who have retired.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again. Let's give Professor Abel. At this time, just before we go for break, I would like to call Dr. Rhonda Jaipal Ogaro to make a presentation to Professor Abel. Thank you all very much. We are now on a brief break.